going to talk a little bit about Erikson, and his theory is called the psychosocial theory of development. He came up with the 8 stages of man. So Erikson was born in Germany in 1902. He was an artist and a teacher, and he was friends with Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter. And so he became interested in psychology due to his friendship with her. So he started studying at Vienna Institute in child psychoanalysis, and he moved to the US in 1933. He also died in 1994, so not too long ago, at the age of 92. So he came up with the psychosocial development, and he believed that he understood how children developed, and he kind of created 8 stages of development. Now, his theory includes the entire lifespan, so we're not going to go into all of them. We're going to only go into the first 3. But he built on Freud's, Freud had stages that he believed in, and he didn't necessarily believe in those stages that Freud came up with. In conversations with Anna, he kind of talked about how he could improve upon Sigmund Freud's stages. And based on his dealings with children and what he saw, he created his own. So he believed that there is a task that must be accomplished at each stage, and that the successful resolution of each stage affects the next stage. Freud also believed that as well, and so he kind of hung on to that. He did take that part with his stages. He believes that each stage promotes the formation of personality strengths or weaknesses. And he believes that it was possible to go back and renegotiate issues from prior stages. There was actually quite a big business in the 70s, 1970s about Erikson and going back into the womb. There were a lot of psychoanalysis that would have adults try and go back into, it sounds really wacky, but they would try and go back into the womb and kind of negotiate some of these stages, and give them what the therapist would give the people what they thought they needed, what they were missing from each of the stages from their parents at that age. And there was actually one time there was a woman that actually died because they created this womb, and it was a made out of fabric, and it was, I don't know, people visited this room that had this womb, and it actually suffocated her. So I don't do that at home, people. Or at your therapist's office. So the first 3 stages we're going to go through are the trust versus mistrust, which is birth to about 18 months. And then 18 months to 2 or 3 years old is the autonomy versus shame and doubt. And then 4 to 5, the preschool years, is initiative versus guilt. So we'll look at those 3. And here's an example. This is kind of a visual of what those look like. Here's a visual of a chart that shows the stages of psychosocial development, and you can see that children actually go through each of these stages and have to kind of negotiate each stage to get to the next stage. So the first stage is trust versus mistrust, and this takes place in the first year of life. And so the task is to develop a sense of trust in the self, others, and the world around them. So what that means is what that means for the child is, do parents, caregivers, whoever is in charge of the child, are they meeting the needs of the child? So if you think about a baby that's born, they have no prior information about how the world works. And so for the first year, they're really developing their understanding of, do I trust this place or do I not trust it? Can I trust it to have my needs met? Or is it a scary place, or are my needs only sometimes met? And that is why if you ever hear about sleep training a baby, um, run, don't don't entertain that thought. It's not a good practice because of this theory and a lot of other theories about children developing their understanding of the world during this first year. And if you're letting them cry it out, you are not giving them the sense of trust that they need to fully understand that this world is that they are safe here. There's also quite a bit of people that are studying the effects of parents that sleep train their babies. They do it because they are stressed out and they believe the children are very stressed out as well. So the children will cry a lot the first night, and the parents cry a lot and are very anxious, and their cortisol levels are raised that first night. The second night, the same thing happens. The baby cries and cries and cries. The parent, their anxiety levels high. Both of them have high cortisol levels. The third night, it is the baby's not crying as much. The baby is kind of settling down. And so the cortisol levels and the anxiety of the parent goes down tremendously starting that third night. But what they have studied is that the cortisol levels never go down in the children, in the babies. They just don't cry because their needs are not getting met, so there's no use crying. And so they're really making discoveries about the world when this has happened. And so trust is established through secure relationships, and that's what we call attachment. An attachment is a special bond between a baby and any adult in their life. It does not have to be a parent. It could be a grandparent. It could be a teacher. It could be a neighbor. Anybody that provides comfort and security, and anybody that is safe, and that they have some sort of a regular contact with that person. So if children's needs go unmet, they are unable to establish trust. So if they are not fed, if they are not changed, if they are not picked up and soothed, if they are not rocked, if they're not held, they're making understandings of the world, and the world is not a trustful place. And children lacking in trust are incapable of higher levels of social functioning, and they have a failure to develop empathy. So it's really important. If nothing else, I really hope that anybody that takes any child development class understands the attachment theory and attachment, and because it is so vital and critical to adults, basically, because if their needs aren't met as babies, it really affects them into their adulthood. So what we need to do is make sure that we give consistent loving care, hold, cuddle, communicate. It's all essential for emotional development. Consistency in who and how people feed the baby or take care of the baby. Babies rely on adults to keep them comfortable. They know that they can't get their needs met any other way except through adults, and so they need consistent, responsive care. And that is how they develop trust. And how can the teacher do this is through primary caregiving systems. So a lot of times what a lot of good infant care does is that there's one teacher assigned to their primary care group. And so maybe they have 3 or 4 infants assigned to one teacher, and that teacher is the primary caregiver. So they're the ones that give them the bottle, that put them down to bed, that take care of them. And usually that child will go to that caregiver if they fall and scrape their knee. They run to that caregiver because they have a bond that's deeper with that caregiver, and it creates an attachment with them. So the second attachment is autonomy versus shame and doubt. So this takes place during the toddler years. And the developmental task during this time is to acquire a sense of autonomy. So or independence, I guess you could say, without suffering extremes of shame or doubt. So you know that children at this age are saying mine and I'll do it myself, that kind of thing. It's very hard for them to share with friends. Um, it is hard doing independent toileting. A lot of things are hard during this time, and we want to give a lot of grace and show them that they can do it themselves. A lot of times, a really good tool to use at the bottom, it says making choices. A lot of good tool to use for toddlers at this age is to give them choices. Would you like to, you wouldn't say, do you want to wear your coat outside? Because that's not a choice. They have to wear their coat outside. So you would say, do you want to wear your green coat or do you want to wear your black coat? So giving them choices like that gives them the feeling that they are in charge. So I just actually said that giving simple choices promotes independence, self-selection of activities, multiples of favorite items. Sharing at this age is very, very difficult. Sharing at any age is difficult, but we tend to expect it at this age, and it's just not a good idea. Don't ever phrase questions, and I see this a lot with teachers and young new teachers, giving them false choices. If it's not a choice, like, do you want to wear your jacket? If that's not a choice, don't offer them like it is a choice. Do you want to go, hey, does everyone want to clean up so we can go to nap? No, thank you. I don't want to clean up. That's not a choice. You just gave them a choice when it's really not a choice. So making sure that you also set clear limits. They need consistent limits to feel in control. They also will go back and forth with behavior, being clingy one day or 1 hour, and then wanting to do it on themselves, being independent, and that's very typical for this age group. The third one is initiative versus guilt, and this takes place during preschool and kindergarten. And so their task at this stage is to acquire a sense of purpose. So they're becoming more focused and less defiant. They want to make choices and feel productive. Their competence increases as they are active and involved, but they're not completely competent in everything. The one thing that they can do is feel guilt and incapable if adults do for them what they can do for themselves, or if we're overly critical, if we get angry because they made a mess, because they can't do something, because they are scared to sleep alone, those kind of things. If we get angry at them, overly critical, or we make them feel guilty for not being able to do something, that will set them back in this developmental task. So here's a little drawing that shows preschool initiative versus guilt. The first one is, look, Mom, I poured my own juice, and the juice is going everywhere, but the initiative is there and they're proud of themselves. The second one is if they pour it and they say, oh, I'm sorry, Mom, noticing that they got it everywhere, they know that they are being shamed or guilted because they didn't do a good job, instead of feeling proud that they were able to pour their own juice. So how can we as teachers be supportive during this time? We want to encourage children to be as independent as they want to be. I say as possible, but it's really as they want to be. Set up classrooms, set up your environment at home where children can do things for themselves. If you're expecting your child to brush their teeth at home, do they have the step stool to be able to reach the sink on their own? If you're asking them to do certain tasks, are they set up for success or are they set up for failure? So focus on gains, not mistakes. Value and support their work. And don't be overly concerned with the mess. They're going to make a mess. That's just part of it. And just so if you understand that going in, you won't be as upset.